welcome to our very first Flourish community event. I'm so glad you could join us today and have a heartfelt conversation about resilience, connection, and unconditional love. At Flourish, we believe that small actions, heartfelt kindness, positive mindset, and shared stories are some of the most powerful ways to shape resilience, connection, and meaning of our lives. So Kathryn Henry, her memoir, A Dime to Say I Love You, embodies that philosophy so beautifully. I came across Kathryn's book when I was chatting with a friend, even before the book was launched. She made this wonderful introduction. She felt that there's so many synergies between what Kathryn has wrote in her book and what we are building at Flourish. So well, when I first checked out Kathryn, what I perceived is a successful corporate leader and a gifted writer. I know she has a book coming up, but from this book, I also got to know Kathryn as from a different dimension, someone who has walked through profound love and profound loss with extraordinary courage and openness. So, Kathryn, thank you so much for joining us here and for opening your heart to this community. We're so looking forward to hearing your reflection and learning from your story. So before we dive into this book, I would love to take a moment to learn a bit more about you. So we recognize all the successful career achievements you have built. For example, serving on the board of Lululemon, and you're also executive roles at Gap and Strauss and Co. So these are very successful career achievements. But from this book, you have been a dime to say I love you. You have been focusing more on some of the human experience that you've gone through. So who is Kathryn? Can you tell us a little bit about you and what who are we talking who are we meeting today?
Well, I'd say just like each of you, I have come to experience life, and I'm sure this will resonate as like many, many chapters. We are all so many things. Like we're mothers, we're sisters, we're daughters, we're aunts, we're workers, employment, have our employment. For me, I'm an athlete, I am a dog mom, I am an aunt, I am um, a corporate exec. I am now an author, which didn't really see that one coming, and I'm a fighter and a survivor, and a lover of life and a learner. Um, Life, we have so many different chapters in life that we all go through, and it's very easy for folks to define us based on what they've seen most recently, or what they've heard, or for folks who are in the media, what the last thing they've seen. But we're all so much more than that. We're the compilation of all our experiences, our heritage, our DNA. Uh,
Mhm.
so that to me is a really complicated question. It's almost an infinite answer.
Yes, absolutely. So maybe one thing we can do is we can maybe go back to some of the earlier chapters in your life, which are also included in the second half of the book. So can you walk us back to maybe an earlier chapter in your life, which has you believe has a profound impact on how you perceive love and connection and resilience?
Sure. The first thing that comes to mind is the experience of being sent to live in a Christian home in Kansas
Mhm.
after a pretty intense childhood with some, I mean, great family in many, many ways, without question, and also abuse as a young girl. So from that experience, it was just completely broadening the aperture on life. At that age, oftentimes, and certainly in the circles of the friends I spent time with, you just kind of go through a flow of life. It's like you go through your grade school and your middle school and your high school or whatever, and then you go to college and you get a job. But this was like plucking me out of everything I knew and dropping me in the middle of like what to me was like a foreign country. And from that, I just got to see life in a whole different way, and see other experiences of people who had things a lot more challenging, frankly, than I did.
Mhm.
And it brought me to a place of resiliency and was almost a fueling experience that gave me more interest to learn more after I'd
Mhm.
seen how much I just really didn't know. It gave me an interest to learn more, to grow more, and to also like connect more with others and understand a little bit more maybe about the human experience.
Mhm. Absolutely. It's powerful. So now let's talk a little bit about this book. So a few decades forward, you wrote this book about your journey through supporting your late wife, Lisa, and how you've been healing and navigating this journey and before and after her transition. So I have so many questions about this chapter of your life, but maybe we can start with the title. So it has a really intriguing title. It says a dime to say I love you. Can you tell us a little bit about the story behind this title and why you picked this as the title for this book?
That was a thing with Lisa and I. We would leave dimes for each other, and you can go back to a song, a penny for your thoughts, a nickel for a kiss, a dime if you tell me that you love me. And so we would actually, we'd even use pennies. Like I'd throw a penny. I went, what do you think about this? So we would just, that was just a fun thing. And she would leave dimes, or I would leave dimes for her in very obscure places to be found who knows when, or even if at times. So after she transitioned, the very first night that she transitioned, after they had taken her body from our home, she had not slept in our bed for weeks. She had been in hospice care upstairs in the home in a hospital bed. But that night, I turned over and I found a dime on her pillow. And that has happened multiple times since then. So it transformed from this beautiful thing that we just shared in life together to a beautiful thing we still share on different planes in life together. And that wasn't the only time that I found dimes or had other experiences that shook me to my core that had no other way of explaining than something outside of the physical realm had had messaged me. And it actually became dime moments are in the book are moments for me that, and I found a lot of people relate to this that have similar experiences. It's been really quite interesting as the book has entered into the world, and I've had people react to it. There are moments of just pause. There are moments where something beyond what might seem normal, commonplace, or expected can happen and just shake me back to my core or shake someone back, receiving a message from beyond, beyond the worldly plane, if you will.
Hmm.
And so a dime to say I love you was an honoring of Lisa of what we shared, and then also an opening to a conversation about things that happen in this world that aren't explainable by pure science, um, and have deep, incredible meaning.
Yeah, I couldn't hold my tears anymore when I read the paragraph about finding the dime on Lisa's pillow. And I do wonder, do you think it's possible that Lisa left that coin for you?
Oh, I do. Yes, I do believe that's possible. There
Yeah.
have been her transition changed me from someone who believed certain things were possible to someone who
Hmm.
now has experienced and knows things are possible. So I have shifted from a place of belief to a place of knowing that, yeah, she did leave that time and she's left
Yes.
others and done other things.
Yes. But there are other dying moments where it felt more like less more, I guess, serendipitous or more divine. So, for example, when you were walking up the stairs of a shrine in Japan and you
Mhm.
found a dime, and which is a US currency, is that right?
Yeah,
A dime in on the stair. Can you tell us a bit about that moment?
it was just completely surreal. I was hiking with a friend. It was a rainy day. We were questioning whether we could even take this hike on the in the Kumanokoto trails, in the Nachahechi trail in Japan. And they told us it was safe to take that it was fine, but nobody else was on the trails. And I was climbing up a set of stairs on the trails, just thinking, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Because this was just day one. And we literally did like 100 miles of walking and hiking over 10 days. It was intense. And the first day was the most intense from an altitude um,
Hmm.
shift perspective. And I stopped for a minute and I was leaning on my hiking poles and thinking, "Oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to get through this?" And my friend was up ahead, like at least 20 meters, and I looked down and there was a dime. And it was, the thing that was so amazing about it was just how just this simple physical little dime could completely change my attitude, my outlook. Like all of a sudden, I had all kinds of energy and I was just reinvigorated. And it was like, wow, it was a message that was sent to me. I felt by Lisa, and I've come to understand that too. For me, is Lisa now represents so much more to me.
Hmm.
An angel, divine, something so much bigger and more profound um, than even just Lisa.
Hmm.
But yeah,
So
that was a profound moment, very profound.
what I'm hearing is Lisa now feels like this, maybe perhaps a guarding angel, or this, how would you characterize this presence?
That Yeah, I would characterize it as uh, the essence that pervades all that we are. I believe there is an energetic force. Call it love, call it divine, call it God. Pick
Hmm.
cosmic consciousness, universal consciousness that runs through and innervates all that we are and all that lives on this earth. Um,
Hmm.
I believe when we leave the physical body, there's that essence of us that continues.
Hmm.
Like a drop of water is a part of the ocean, but when it's pulled from the ocean, it's a drop of water. But it can be returned.
Hmm.
It still is the ocean. So I see it in that light. Lisa's
Hmm.
name, her Hawaiian name, she's a very powerful Hawaiian woman. Her Hawaiian name was Mahealani, and Mahealani means divine mist. And it's that which connects the ethereal with the physical. And that is how I experience her now, is that like that glue, if you will, that connects those
That's
and connected
incredibly
me to
beautiful.
that. That was one of the final gifts she gave to me was opening my aperture to experience that in a whole different way.
That's so beautiful. And when you mentioned this, you also use an interesting word. You said Lisa's transition. So the first time I heard this, I wasn't sure what you meant, but later I understand that you meant passing away. Can you tell us a bit about how you perceived? I mean, why did you choose this word, and how does that change how you perceive um, certain events?
Well, death is the big monster in the room, right? That we
Hmm. Hmm.
faced. And what I experienced when Lisa died, that was the word, was that indeed she wasn't dead, that there was still an essence that lived on. The death was of the physical body. So transition to me, life and death and birth. They're just different states of existence, and so the death was not of Lisa in my world. I mean, that's just not how I ended up experiencing it. Rather, it was the physical body and her transition out of that into a different existence.
Hmm. This reminds me a lot of one of my favorite movies, Coco. It's
Oh
about,
yeah,
yes,
that was a hard one
I,
for me to watch initially, but also
it's,
beautiful.
yeah, every time when I watch it, I cry really, really hard. But I find comfort, solace in the idea that when someone leaves us, they are not gone. They just transformed into a different existence. And as long as we remember and honor them and tell their story, like what you are doing in this
Yeah.
book, they are with us. So
Yes.
yeah.
And we all have a story that matters. Every single one of us has a story that matters and deserves to be told, deserves to be shared. We learn through story, we connect through story, we share cultural things through stories. Many generations share that. Many cultures do.
Hmm.
Stories are powerful. They're very powerful. And when we share them, we can find ways to connect more meaningfully with each other.
Hmm. So would you say that writing this book is part of sharing Lisa's story and your story together as a way to find eternity,
Hmm. I haven't had it posed that way. To find eternity. Um,
or
I would
something
say,
that's long lasting,
yeah, well,
transcends our existence?
yeah, I think the book was written to honor Lisa, honor
Hmm.
what we went through, and to respect and honor a conversation we had where we had discussed just how much it would have been beneficial for us to get some of the learnings we got through the process earlier because we went through a lot of struggle, a lot of
Hmm.
what I would say face planting, falling down and getting back up, and a lot of turmoil that could have been eased had we learned some of these lessons. And so the primary drivers for writing the book, I frankly didn't need or want my story out there per se, um, but believed and still do believe and am coming to experience that the sharing of
Hmm.
that story is certainly honoring her memory like the Coco, right? It's like
Hmm.
she's out there, she's still there and having an impact. She was an amazing, coach and teacher and mentor for many. Um, and the learnings are bringing positive impact for people that are just saying, yeah, this was a worthwhile read. Like this had some things that made me think, or maybe some things I agree with, maybe some things I don't agree with, maybe some things I haven't ever thought of before,
Hmm.
and broaden my perspective and is bringing benefit. I feel very strongly that we need more connection. We need more light and love. We need people to like give each other a break too. Like there's enough division and hate out there. We need to counter that with other ways to connect and care for each other.
Hmm.
And so it was my my attempt at taking a step in that direction.
Absolutely. I believe that now Lisa is living with many of us through
Mm,
this book. And I've had many nights when I read this book and just had tears or underlined some sentences you have or admiring the quotes you included. And one thing I want to say, I really appreciate this book, and I found it very unique, is after every chapter you included a reflection question. So it really invites the reader to also reflect on the story you have shared and come with the shared story, like you said, the power of
hmm
connection through sharing a moment of, even difficult emotions and difficult stories you told in the book. So really, thank you for that. Um, you also mentioned something really interesting, that is, you didn't expect yourself to be an author. You didn't see that coming. And this experience really prompted you to write the book. So what are some, I guess, things that surprised you as you engage in this expressive writing? So I want to preface that with a little bit psychology. So in psychology, there's a lot of research about the power of expressive writing. That is, writing by itself is a healing process, and it can bring
absolutely.
you new insights. So yeah, what's your experience like? Were there new insights as you write this book? And can you share that, some of
So
that with us?
yeah, yes, a lot of insights, frankly. And to start, so writing, I was not much on journaling throughout my life. Lisa was. I still have her journals from when she was like 5 years old, and she gave me permission to read them. Um, I was not one to keep a diary, but after her transition, I did a lot of journaling. And that was such
Hmm.
a cathartic and healing process for me. So I can appreciate the psychology that you're sharing because I experienced it. And it was very healing. The writing process for me, I've come to maybe experience that is somewhat unique because I've been to a couple of publishing like conferences and talked to a bunch of different people that are authors. It's a new world that I had not been exposed to before. Um, for me, it everything just flowed. It was from the first like kind of conversation I had when Forbes Advantage Media reached out to me about doing a book. Once I got past thinking that I was being punked, um, seriously, I was like, this is crazy. Um, we went through a process of doing a book architecture, and everything was just really clear to me in my head of exactly what the book needed to be and how it needed to be constructed. Those quotes are there for a reason. The introspection
Hmm.
part is there for a reason. The stories are there for a reason, and the lessons and learnings are there. And the intention that went behind the book was as I reflected on my journey and Lisa and my journey together, and then my journey after her transition, um, there were some very impactful things, both experiences and then readings. So the quotes are, those are all from authors or people or experiences that impacted me throughout my journey and kind of shaped who I became through learning and exploration. The introspection was there, is there, because the intention of the book was not let's share this story or be positioned as someone who has the answers. It was more I want to present some learnings that came and then give the reader the space to go into their own experience and determine like what does this mean to you. I'm not sharing things as these are the answers or this is right or what you should believe. No, I'm sharing things to touch someone in a place where they can then spark their own curiosity, their own introspection, their own contemplation practices, whatever they may be, to shape their journey. And that was the only reason and intent. And as the author, as the writer, sometimes I just found that it almost felt like it was being channeled to me through Divine, through
Hmm.
Lisa, that it was just, I was really, when it was right, I was really clear and I could write. And then when I wasn't in that zone, sometimes I'd need to just like take a break and wait until I could find that space. It was a great process though. It was a lot of fun and it was less than a year from the time I went into contract with the publisher to the book on the shelves, literally. So it was
Hmm.
pretty quick process.
I very much felt the connection, like you mentioned. I feel that I see myself in your own words too. So I really appreciate you being very intentional, like when you are writing for Lisa and sharing her story, but also writing for the reader and for that sense of connection. So thank you for doing that. We touched on the die moment, the concept of die moment, and there is another really interesting concept in the book called AFCO. Sorry,
AFCOs, yep.
AFGOS. So can you tell us a little bit about AFGOS and give us an example of AFGO you've experienced in this cancer and grieving journey?
It became, we went through nearly 10 years of a battle, and there were a lot of ups and downs. Um, and sometimes Lisa and I joked, she started the joke that it felt like we were playing a game of whack-a-mole with cancer because it's like when something got dealt with, something else came up. And it was really heavy at times.
Hmm.
So, one in particular that stands out is when I thought the only thing that was going to save her life was getting this clinical trial drug called Yondelis. And
Hmm.
we flew down to a lab in LA and we got accepted to this clinical trial. And she was randomized into the control drug. And I was so I can't even describe in words the anger that was coursing through every cell in my body. Um, And in hindsight, if I fast forward, that was an AFGO. And we would say to each other, AFGO, which means another frickin' growth opportunity. And sometimes it was another fucking growth opportunity because we were at that point where it was just like we were so like it was like letting out a little bit of anger while also embracing like this is happening. So we might as well just fast forward to there's going to be some growth that comes out of this somehow and recontextualize what's happening. And it's
Mhm.
not easy. It's like, things, but it helped us. It was actually a healing process to instead of getting into a kind of victim mentality or which sometimes we'd have our moments. Why is this happening to us? Why is this happening to my wife? Why is my wife going to die? She's been a bodybuilder. She's taken great care of herself. She doesn't deserve this. um,
Mhm.
but those aren't the choices we get to make, and that's not the power that we hold. So AFCO was a way that we would try to bring some levity and acknowledge too that every time we went through certain things that seemed just like unsurmountable, when we got through them, like there came a point in time where it was like, wow, we made it through. And we actually would get the learnings. So we went through enough things as well that we realized, yep, this is just another freaking growth opportunity. And it actually got easier and easier to deal with things that way. And and now I can truly say I really don't have any fear of death. Like or I mean I'm not calling upon it or wanting it to happen, but it's going to happen and it doesn't really take up any of my mental processes because of the experiences we went through.
That is truly, truly powerful. And I can tell you, after learning about AFGO, now I've been approaching events, unexpected, surprising events in my life with a different learning attitude because now I have a word to say what that is. It's a F learning opportunity. So
Yep,
thank you so much for sharing. And
it
definitely think
works.
that's
It
it works.
does.
It works. And I appreciate you putting the F word there. You are
Yeah.
allowed to
I don't
feel
I don't
angry. You're
tend to
allowed to
curse a
feel
lot, but there are moments.
yes. Absolutely. Thank you. Um, wonderful. Now, I would love to transition a little bit to self-care and finding resilience and mindfulness and spirituality.
Mhm.
So, how you take care of yourself before and after Lisa's transition. So, could you tell us what a typical day looked like when you were when I don't want to say you are taking care of Lisa because I know she's a very
Mhm.
independent woman, so I don't feel that's the right way to say it. So during this cancer journey together, how were you taking care of yourself as the person, a really important pillar of her cancer journey?
I describe like the journey and the grief path as well as I describe it as a labyrinthine path because it just there's not when things like this happen, there is no rhyme or rhythm or reason
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
to what we can be faced with. So sometimes just taking care of yourself, myself, would be in the extremes of, chemo or in the hospital or surgery, is just taking a moment to go walk in nature, to go
mm-hmm,
outside, to get some fresh air from the hospital, to listen to some kind of music or something that feeds me, see the dog, take the dog for a walk. It could be as simple as that. Two times when, Lisa would have a little bit more health, the whether it was the last couple days before she went into another chemo cycle or home from surgery and recovering where cook a nice meal and enjoy a meal together, have friends and family over and grill in the backyard or take a trip somewhere. um, you know I, for me self-care starts with that that self-love and that self-connection where we know where we're at. We know when we're in a place
Hmm.
where we're pushing ourselves too far or where, we're struggling, and we can acknowledge it and we can own it, and we can put in place the things that help us to correct that. One of the
Hmm.
chapters in the book is on self-love, and it basically
Hmm.
encourages, going into introspection and reflecting on when have you been at your like place where you feel light and airy and full and complete and whole, and what are the
Hmm.
things that bring you there, and have that list, like your self-love list, and know how to do that. It's different for everybody.
Hmm.
Lisa was very much lived through her body, and she was, as her body was failing, it was so hard because how she meditated and did things like that was like running, throwing the javelin, being very, very active. So for her, a life of, watching TV or reading a book was not going to be fulfilling. Whereas I know others in my life where they'd be totally thrilled with that. So
Hmm.
we have to know ourselves enough and be connected enough with where we're at, and also be okay with asking for help and
Hmm.
for acknowledging, I think I need to do something to bring myself back to my center. For me, meditation was huge. Just taking that
Hmm.
time in silence. Music is huge. Dance is huge. Athletics is huge. Loved ones. And also, major quiet time.
Totally.
I think a
Yes.
big part of the journey is we need to find those things. And for Lisa and I, we each had to find those individually for ourselves, but we also found what that was together. There were, like three entities. There was, each of us had to care for ourselves, but then we had the space that we would enter together that was cherished and really
Hmm.
important to us, that nourished each of us, but also nourished the couple that we were.
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate you highlighting how well-being self-care looks different for everyone, and you build up your list after trial and error. Um, well, there was one thing on the that you didn't mention on the list, but I think it might have played a big role. That is your punch bag.
Oh,
So,
yeah. I still have that hanging in my garage here. Yeah,
mhm,
exercise, working out, athletics, getting physical. That was a godsend, especially like it crescendoed when Lisa went into hospice care, because that was so heavy and so hard at that transition. They expected it to be a couple days, and it was weeks that she
mhm,
carried on. And I know she was carrying on, actually. She was beating the shit out of cancer. She was clearing it out of her body. Um, and she got to where she was just, she had taken no food, no water, was just not communicating any longer. And, it was just so, the end was so ever present, even though I still didn't connect that she was going to die in some ways. I would go and spend hours on that punching bag, and I would wail and wail and wail on it. And then I'd fall to my knees in absolute tears, and then get up and do it some more. And then do some yoga, and then beat the bag, and then cry, and then do yoga, and then beat the bag, and then cry. It was like, it's like if you could imagine like a towel full of water, you're wringing it out. It's like wringing the emotions out of my body that are just otherwise would just consume me. That's what that punching bag was for me.
yes, yes. I recommend everyone to find your own punching bag. I think it's a very, very healthy way to cope with difficult emotions. For people could, no, I mean, I truly believe that for us, we should all go through difficult life experiences, should all find that punching bag, and that shouldn't be other people, for example, because you've been talking a lot about kindness, and I've seen that people could turn to other people as their punching bags, and that is a
Yeah.
maladaptive coping
Or
strategy. So,
themselves, right? People
or
turn to
themselves.
themselves too.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's not
Absolutely.
uncommon, especially for women. We just we tend to be hard on ourselves.
Mhm. Do you want to share a bit about the final moment with of Lisa's transition. I find that that chapter is in the opening chapter. I find that moment to be incredibly powerful. Really highlights how she is a woman of miracle, a woman of strength and resilience. Um, would you want to share that moment with the audience?
I'd be happy to. It was, uh, so I think I'd mentioned that, it had been a few weeks she was in hospice care and had basically gone from a very swollen abdomen, filled with cancerous tissue and fluids, really. Um, and over the course of 2 weeks, without consuming anything, had cleared that out of her body through catheter. And the hospice folks were like, I've never seen anything like this. This is crazy. And people were coming and wanting to say their goodbyes. And I just was I was kind of done. I was like, okay, I just need some time with I just need I just need my time with my wife. I don't want anybody else here. Everybody's seen her that needs to. It's my time with her. And I sent our pup off too because it was just heavy and sent him off to stay with his dog walker, dog sitter. And like 6 in the morning, I was with her and I turned on our wedding video. And we watched that for like 45 minutes. And of course, she's not communicating verbally at all, but just held her hand. I laughed, I cried, and I know I could feel her there and just a look of contentment on her face. And then during that, I realized like she needs a bath. It was a Friday morning, and hospice folks didn't usually come over the weekend unless it was an emergency. So I was like, oh, I need to get her a bath because she was an athlete and she was also someone who
Mhm.
felt like it was a joke that you could judge the value of a day by how many showers you needed to take. So if you needed like 3 showers or something, that was a good day. That was a really good day. So I was like, oh, I need to make sure she gets a shower or a bath. And so I was going to call hospice. And before I could call them, the hospice nurse called me and she said, hey, I'm just checking on you guys. I wanted to know if, maybe we could stop by today and just see how you guys are doing. And yeah, and I was like, okay, like this is just amazing. Like, sometimes it's like, okay, it's just happened. Thank you. And then when they showed up, it was not only the hospice nurse, it was also like the care manager person, like a social worker kind of care manager and an aide. And usually only one would show up. I've
Mhm.
never experienced them all come at the same time. And also during this time, so the three of them and me were giving Lisa a bath and changing the sheets and getting her into her favorite Lululemon Pima cotton tee, which she always wanted to be in. And our friends, some really good friends of ours that lived up the street, had gone to pick up a prescription of compounded morphine that had to be picked up from a special pharmacy downtown San Francisco. So they had come and said a hello from the door to Lisa, and we're in the living room. And we got done giving her a bath and had her all in her clothes and the sheets, and I gave her a kiss on the forehead and I said, I love you, baby. And I turned to the hospice nurse to say, okay, like if I need anything over the weekend, what do we do? And just as I was doing that, the hospice aide put her hand on my forearm, and she said, Lisa just took her last breath. And it was it was it was hard because I wasn't even prepared for that. I just was all I was in the
Mhm.
mode of, this is where we're at. She's getting bathed. Then I'll turn on some show or something and sit with her and we'll watch TV, and she had this great content look on her face, and my world just flipped. And we went through, it's you just don't know. I didn't know, like, now what happens? And they're saying things like, pronouncing her death, and we need to arrange for the body pickup. And I'm like, body pickup? Oh, I didn't even like it was just surreal. And after we went through all those logistics, I went back in to sit with her. and she had a big smile on her face. So it had gone from a look of contentment to this big smile. And I knew it was like her way of telling me, like, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm like, yeah, I wish I was. um, and yeah, I mean, that was the process. What else would I share about that? I mean, hospice workers are angels on earth without question. They
It-
were so incredibly amazing. Um, yeah, and that was the hardest moment of my life was when I let them take the body. And the grief, grief is a tough one. Um,
mhm,
it's grief went on before she transitioned because she was transitioning before that from the woman she
mhm,
had been to very, very quickly down a path of, you know, changes. Just like I watched her mother, we watched her go from dementia. And that's an
mhm,
absolute brutal disease. You see someone that you love and care that goes,
mhm.
mentally,
Yes. Yes.
emotionally, they're gone. Um, or they're just completely changed and unrecognizable. And so grief is a path. It's a path that I still grieve. There's still grief without question. Um, and it just continues
Mhm.
to evolve.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That was one of the most heartbreaking moment in the book you shared them, but also like you mentioned, Lisa had a big smile on her face and the contentment. I thought that was also a huge relief knowing that she left in peace and contentment.
Well,
Um,
and I think that was her final parting gift to me. She left me in the best possible hands she could have. If she would have gone at a time when hospice wasn't there or my friends had, it was like everything came. I really think she was like waiting for the right moment and knew that like what would be best for me.
mhm,
And I think that was a final gift that she was able to give to me. Like there would never have been a good time for that. But
yes.
I had the hospice workers to just walk me through what we had to deal with. And then I had our friends there
Mhm.
after they left, to walk me through other things.
Wow, that's so beautiful. And I think it also is such a courageous thing because I imagine, when facing loss, it's so probably very kind of tempting to avoid, to kind of distract or suppress, or like you mentioned, going to these places that are like deeply emotionally charged. And I just find, that to be so courageous to fully embrace those memories and those emotions and to just fully be present. I think it is very connected to the meditation that you mentioned and just this, embracing or being present. And like you said, just the bubbling up can only occur when you
Mhm.
allow the space and the time and the stillness for it to arise. And I just find that to be really deeply courageous.
Yeah, I would love to, call it courageous, but I also have to give some credit. I made a promise to Lisa. So
Mm,
she was, without a doubt, when it got towards the end, she was very concerned about me. We both had a history of abusiveness, not, I mean, done to ourselves, um, and addiction. And she was like, I'm afraid, like, if I die, when I die, you're going to fall into, you know, something I don't want you to fall into. And I was like, I won't, honey, I won't, and she literally was like, you're going to promise me, like, you are going to promise me that you're not going to do that. And I did. I made a promise. And frankly, there were times where that promise was the place I found strength. It's like, I can't, because I promised her I would not. And sometimes that was all I had to hold on to. So, and then you build, it's like building a new muscle, whether it's the meditation or whether it's working out, you over time, you build the muscle, and then it becomes easier and easier, and you can connect and go into deeper stages of meditation more quickly. But I'll tell you, in the beginning, also in the book, I do mention that I purposely did not go back to an operating role. I was blessed that I had a board position so that, like, financially I could pay the bills and have food on the table. Um, but it would have been really easy for me to just go back to one of those jobs that demands, you know, 24/7 operating role, always on call. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. Because if I do that, that's just going into a place of complete distraction. And I will not do the work I need to do to really heal. Um, because I won't have to. I will have a permanent distraction that will keep me from it. Um, and that it literally was a full-time job for me. I mean, I would spend hours every day in spiritual study or meditative practices after she transitioned. My practices deepened because I didn't have a full-time job. But back to your point, that was a combination of courageous. I'd like to think a little bit of intelligence, but a lot of it was around my wife still having my back even after she transitioned with the promises she made me. And I wasn't happy with her a few times. It's like, why did I make that promise to you? But I did, and I held it because integrity mattered.
Wow. And it sounds like it's been such a gift, actually, when in hard times.
Yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt. Um, I would rather have her here, but it isn't my choice. That is not an option. And so my choice is to honor her and to just constantly try to grow and learn and be the best individual I could be, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. Oh, and sorry, I meant the her making you promise was a
Oh
gift.
yeah. Yeah. No,
Just
that was her gift. That was a huge gift. You're right. You're absolutely right.
mm,
And as was how she exited this plane of existence. I can't even imagine. It was hard enough. I can't imagine what it would have been like if those hospice workers hadn't been there and our friends.
mm, wow.
I just want to have a quick time check because I know we booked 4 to 5, and I really, really appreciate everyone for staying on the call, even though it's well past 5. I think if Kat, you want to ask a question, I think definitely would love that. But just want to acknowledge that if folks have other things, you know, totally feel free to leave, and really appreciate everyone for dealing with the technical challenge at the beginning too. So
That was an AFCO, Xuan.
that was AFCO. That was an AFCO. I was like, yes, very much so. So Kat, do you want to ask a question? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I also just want to make sure we leave room for everyone.
Oh, thank you. I I have less of a question, I guess, just more of an appreciation for how well you go over how grief is a labyrinth, and a path, because and kind of the losses that you go through before the transition, because there's so many little things, the loss of the things you got to do together before, and then how she stopped speaking, and it feels like when you're going through grief, you're losing a lot. It's not just one big loss, it's a lot of turning corners, losing something else, and then after the transition, the loss of being able to just turn and talk to that person, and and so often it feels like we're pushed to, like, okay, you've had your 6 weeks, like,
Oh, I love Get Over It.
yes, and it's never ending. There is no end to it. It just changes, and maybe you're not turning those corners and hitting those hard losses as often as before, but it's never going to stop. And I think it's really beautiful how you kind of walk us through that in your book.
I think you share something that sparks something I think is really important too, and thank you for that, for your comment. Um, we only have the grief because we have the love. And so the more that we can open up that awareness and be like, wow, I feel this crappy because I really love this person and they mean so much to me. And I don't know how I'm going to, exist without them here or with them here in a whole different way. And that love, like to me, and this is the healing agent, is if we come to experience that love is this energy that innervates and connects us all, and that this person that we've lost actually is their essence is love, we're surrounded by that love, which means they're still here in some way, shape, or form. So embrace that. Embrace that love and allow that to fill some of the void that the grief is causing. Because it's almost its responsibility because it caused it in the first place. So the more like we can open the aperture on that and acknowledge that we're feeling these things, we're having the grief because of the flip side of it, because of the love, um, that can ease and help kind of shift some of the grief in some ways. It doesn't, and it's not like it goes away. There's nothing to get over, nor would you want to. Why would you not want to feel those things? Like, why would you not want to embrace that? So thank you for sharing that.
And I build on that question and ask a little bit more about positive emotions during the grieving process. So I think in the book you mentioned about humor, about joy. So I think lots of times when people are going through a very difficult period of their life, whether it's before or after the transition of a loved one, they may feel wrong to feel positive emotions such as joy or find humor.
Oh,
Can you say a bit about how you've been dealing with that? Are there moments when you felt sadness or negative emotion is the right answer, but then how do you let in some of the positive emotions in this healing process?
yeah, we actively went through that. There was a time where, we were we had a lot of laughter in our lives, and then all of a sudden this, dark cloud of cancer, came along, and we had to like go through a whole like reconciliation with, is it okay to still laugh? Is it okay to still have fun? Is it like, how does that have a place here? And it was an interesting dance, but we experienced it and realized not only was it okay, but it was also healing. Like laughter is such a powerful healer. um, I'll never forget one day after she'd been in chemo a couple cycles and was bald head, lost all her hair, sitting on the couch, watching TV in not feeling well with a beanie on her head. And our puppy, Pono, came up from behind her, and he never got into any trouble or anything, did anything, what the Hawaiians would say, pilikia, trouble. He jumped up on the back of the couch. He grabbed the beanie off her head and pulled it off and ran off. And I was, for a minute, I was like mortified, like, oh my God. And then Lisa just burst into laughter. And it was just this moment of relief almost, but also it just became so much bigger than that. And it was like it broke through this ice of, wow, that actually felt good. And we had a conversation about it. Um, and it comes back to opening the aperture on life. All these things are all happening concurrently in life. Life is never all grief, all love, all happy, all sad. And the more we open our view and broaden our perspective, the more we can welcome other things in. And sometimes we don't want to, and sometimes we're not going to, and that's okay. But make it a conscious decision and know that you actually do have the power to choose some of these things. Some of these things are happiness, laughter, joy. Those are choices. Um, and when we get in a position of taking our providence, our power, then it's a great, I just had a conversation with a friend who's holding on to anger for loss of their father when they were like 20 years old, and this person is now well into their 60s. We had a beautiful conversation, and where it ended was this individual was like, this is really cool because now I know, like, I can choose to still be angry and I don't have to. And just
Hmm.
knowing it's a choice is powerful versus the feeling that they had coming into the conversation was, I'm consumed with this anger. And it's like, well, where's it coming from? Like, you have control. You have, there's not a lot we have control of in life, but who we're going to be and how we respond to a situation, that is something we have control and choice over, who we're going to be. So don't ever give that up.
That's such a perfect place to wrap up this conversation. Really love this. I love the saying, life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we respond to it. So
Yeah.
truly, thank you for sharing all these very touching moments and the wisdom, the lessons from these experiences, the
And
growth opportunities. So
and thank you all for sharing. And Maya, you know, we're here. If you, if you need support, reach out for it.
Oh, thank you. Definitely. That's why I'm here. I saw this
Yeah.
come through the inbox and I was like, whoa, it was one of those dimes, so to speak, that appeared
Yep.
on my land.
Yep. When we pay attention, it's amazing how much they happen.
all right.
All
Thank you, everyone. And
right.
I'm going to stop recording now.
All right.